Good Tuesday morning to you. Sometimes I get a word stuck in my head, a phrase or something that I find is connected to a moment but lingers on. In so many ways, I blame Sesame Street. I'm a Gen Xer, right? I grew up with Sesame Street. And there was always the word of the day. And every skit, every scene with the different characters involved the word of the day. Sometimes it seemed like a stretch, and sometimes it was completely organic. But the word of the day was something they focused on as a tool for teaching children what was the value in learning a new word. My word of the day is consolation. For whatever reason, I went to bed last night just hearing this phrase in my head. My Lord, you are our hope and consolation. And I woke up with that thinking, okay, what a great topic for us on our quick devotional this morning. You know, the definition of consolation is the delight or satisfaction experienced when distress or suffering is alleviated or positive support and encouragement are given. Lord, you are our hope and consolation. You alleviate all that weighs on us, all that worries us. You are at work and the response for which we cling to. That's the reality of life. And so with a quick little search in my concordance, I realized that the word consolation actually is concentrated in one particular passage. Paul in 2 Corinthians, right in the opening of it, he uses the word consolation 10 times in verses 3 through 7. Now, I don't know about you, but when people use the same word over and over again, I tend to be frustrated. It seems redundant. And I think there's a thesaurus of a whole lot of other words that could be used in this moment. But maybe Paul is trying to hold an image and prove a point here. And so I'm going to read to you 2 Corinthians 1, verses 3 through 7. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of all mercy and the God of all consolation. He consoles us in our affliction so that we may be able to console those who are afflicted in any way with the consolation which we ourselves are consoled by God. For just as the suffering of Christ are abundant for us, so also our consolation is abundant through Christ. If we are being afflicted, it is for your consolation and salvation. If we are being consoled, it is for your consolation which you experience when you patiently endure the same suffering that we are also suffering. Our hope for you is unshakable, for we know that as you share in our sufferings, so you also share in our consolation. Now, the context of Paul as he writes this second letter to his beautiful community in Corinth, he's been separated from them and he longs to be with them again. There is clearly things that are happening that do not permit him to go to Corinth, do not permit him to be with the congregation. And he's aching, he's wearing on him that he cannot be with them. But at the same time, he recognizes that as they are the church together, as they're gathered together, they too have their own things that they are dealing with. They have their own suffering, their own tribulations and trials that they are having to face as a church in the ancient world. Now, go back to that definition again. Consolation is the delight or satisfaction experienced when distress or suffering is alleviated. Throughout this short passage, Paul uses two words almost synonymously, console and consolation. He takes everything that he is facing and everything that the people in Corinth might be facing, and he ties them together with how God is at work. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of all mercy and the God of all consolation. The God who alleviates everything that we face. The God who knows our suffering and steps into it with us. The God who goes before us in whatever might be weighing on us. God, you are our hope and our consolation. We come to the one who consoles us in every circumstance. It's interesting that this is the passage that uses consolation and console so beautifully, and yet this is the very passage that begins our funeral services. We comfort others in their sorrow because we have been comforted in our sorrows. We have the capacity to meet one another, to care for one another because of what God has already done for us, how God has already cared for us. And Paul even goes as far to say is we can rejoice in our suffering because we know that not just for us, but for one another as a community gathered together near and far, our consolation is in God. He goes before us. He cares for us. Where our suffering is alleviated. It's not always as we want in the moment, but God does care for us. And in the bigger picture, God has cared for us and provided all that we could possibly need through his Son, Jesus Christ. As you begin a new week, whatever that looks like, I wonder if these words speak a certain amount of truth to as you're facing the week, as you're wondering about what's next, as maybe things are starting to arise and you're just figuring out where God is in all of that. May you too find hope and consolation in the one who created, redeemed, and sanctifies you. But more than anything, may you know the real presence of Christ in that consolation today. Have a great day.